The story begins with Beta telling Shadow and the Shadow Garden members that the cult of Diablos has been quiet in Midgar Kingdom since the Bushin Festival. She says the smaller branches of the cult have stopped moving, and even the Fenrir sect, which was starting to make a comeback, seems stuck. Gamma and Irisphelia agree this fits with Lord Shadow's plans, and they decide to focus on Oriana Kingdom next. But Ada brings up a concern, mentioning that a lot of money has recently started flowing into the Lawless City. Beta explains that the Lawless City isn't part of any country. It's a huge, dangerous area full of crime, money, and power. She warns that any big trouble there could spread to the rest of the world. Gamma suggests sending more people to keep control. Shadow says he feels the Lawless City is soaked in blood and notices the moon has been red lately, like the red moon from an old legend. This reminds the Shadow Garden members of a sad event from 1,000 years ago, and they worry that nearby kingdoms could be destroyed if they don't act. Alpha tells everyone to stay quiet and says if the red moon is a bad sign, they can't ignore it. Shadow says he will handle it alone, but he's mostly interested in the money. Beta wonders if Shadow plans to go by himself, but Shadow says there's nothing to worry about since the moon has only just turned red. Alpha believes that even something as scary as the red moon is no match for Lord Shadow, while Shadow himself thinks the moon looks even more beautiful in red. The others agree, saying they can only admire it because of his protection and wish him luck. Shadow, amused, thinks that the girls are good at making things up. Deep down, he still thinks the cult of Diablos isn't real and that everyone is just going along with his pretend story. The scene then shifts to Goldie and Quentin, who are standing in front of the Crimson Tower, ruled by the Blood Queen, one of the top leaders of the Lawless City. They notice even the corpse raiders stay away from the tower, probably because they know they'll turn into ghouls if they get too close. A man suddenly appears and tells them they aren't allowed to enter. He says only the Blood Queen's servants, guests, or powerful warriors can get in. Goldie claims they are strong warriors planning to hunt the Blood Queen, but the man laughs and says he made the same mistake once and lost an arm for it. Now he serves as a guard. Known as the White Devil, he quickly defeats Goldie and Quentin in a fight. Next, the story shifts to Sid, who's being pulled around the Lawless City by his sister, Claire. Sid thinks the place looks even worse than he imagined. Claire tells him off for staring and explains they're going to the Dark Knight Association for a strategy meeting. Sid is surprised, since he's never heard of such a group in Midgar. Claire explains it's an unofficial group for knights who don't belong to any official organization. Sid then remembers how they ended up here. After Claire won the Bushin Festival, he used some connections to treat her to a nice dinner at Mitsugoshi. Claire then told him she planned to go to the Lawless City to hunt vampires and took him along. Now, Claire says she brought Sid here to help him and promises that if he follows her orders, she could get him into the Midgar Knight Order after he graduates. But Sid hasn't really thought about his future and just wants a job where he can do his own thing. A slave trader approaches Claire and tries to convince her to buy one of his slaves by complimenting her beauty. He shows her 2 slaves, Goldie and Quentin, and offers to sell both for 35 million. Sid thinks he recognizes them but can't remember from where. Claire refuses, saying she has all the pets she needs, jokingly pointing at Sid, and walks away. As Claire drags him along, Sid asks her to let go, but she says he'll get lost if she does. He insists he won't, but soon enough, he's lost in the city. Sid remembers he only stepped out of the inn because he was bored when a man stole his wallet. Using his slime suit, Sid not only takes back his wallet but also steals the thief's wallet. As he walks around, more pickpockets try to steal from him, but Sid keeps taking their wallets instead. He thinks the city is amazing because he can make money just by walking around. While exploring, he notices people beating up a ghoul. Sid remembers that ghouls, who are usually servants of vampires, are very tough, but here they are treated like punching bags. As night falls, Sid suddenly feels a rush of magical energy. The ghoul changes and starts attacking the people who were hurting it, biting one of them and turning him into a ghoul. Sid realizes that ghouls don't usually multiply like this and thinks the red moon is making the magic in the area stronger. He decides he needs to do something before more ghouls are created and starts to think of a way to use the situation to his advantage. A red-haired girl appears and kills the ghouls, introducing herself as Marie, an ancient vampire hunter. She warns Sid to run, saying that the madness has begun, and with the red moon above them, they don't have much time. Marie leaves, and back at the inn, Claire discovers that Sid is missing and gets very angry. When a ghoul suddenly attacks a man next to her, Claire kills it and asks him if he's seen her brother. The man hasn't, so Claire keeps searching. Meanwhile, Sid's two friends are also in the lawless city, hoping to have some fun in the pleasure district. They're excited to see the women there and think the trip was worth the risk. But soon, a ghoul attacks them from behind, and they start running for their lives. Nearby, a tired prostitute is frustrated with her last customer and wonders how much longer she'll have to live like this. She hears noises outside and gets scared when ghouls start attacking people. One even enters her room. Just then, Shadow appears, kills the ghoul, and repeats Marie's warning, thinking it sounds cool. The girl, grateful, asks who he is, and Shadow introduces himself as Shadow before leaving. Another girl comes to check on her, shocked to see the dead ghoul. The prostitute tells her that a man named Shadow saved her, and the girl explains that Shadow is the same person who took down corrupt clergy members. The prostitute, however, doesn't think he's a bad guy and decides to leave the city, thanking Shadow. The scene shifts to a nine-tailed fox named Yukime, who learns that the vampires have let loose ghouls in the city. Elsewhere, Claire is looking at a body, upset, thinking it's her brother. Marie approaches and asks if she's the woman looking for a black-haired man with black eyes. Claire says yes, but Marie points out that the body doesn't match that description. Claire realizes it's not her brother. Marie tells her she met two men who matched the description. One was standing and grinning in front of a ghoul, but Claire dismisses this as not being her brother. Marie then describes a young dark knight who was captured by followers of the Blood Queen and is likely being held at the Crimson Tower, where they may be planning to use him as a sacrifice to wake the Blood Queen from her 1,000-year sleep. Marie explains that the Blood Queen needs the blood of a young man to wake up, which surprises Claire since she didn't know the Blood Queen was sleeping. Marie says it's been a secret for 1,000 years, but on the night of the red moon, she will rise again. Since Marie has her own reasons for going to the Crimson Tower, Claire suggests they team up. They fight off some attacking ghouls as they head out. Meanwhile, Juggernaut, one of the rulers of the lawless city, says it's been a long time since he's seen a battle like this. In another part of town, the Dark Knights are in a panic, terrified of the ghouls attacking them. Two Dark Knights, a woman and a warrior, try to fight back but are quickly overpowered until Shadow shows up and saves them, repeating the same line he told the rescued prostitute. Inside the Crimson Tower, a vampire reports to Lord Crimson that the preparations for the sacrifice are almost done, and their plan to take over the city is moving forward. But they still have some resistance, probably from Yukime, the spirit fox who rules the White Tower, and Juggernaut, the ruler of the Black Tower. Crimson isn't worried, confident they'll be defeated once the Blood Queen wakes up. The vampire then mentions that someone is moving through the city, killing ghouls. We then see Yukime and Juggernaut fighting ghouls, eventually facing each other, ready to fight, until Shadow steps in. When they ask who he is, Shadow introduces himself as the one who lurks in darkness to hunt those in the shadows. Nearby, the White Devil reflects on his violent past, remembering that he once felt alive by killing. Now, he thinks he was wrong, and that his pride led to his downfall. Juggernaut and Yukime are fighting ghouls in the lawless city, which frustrates the White Devil. He wonders why they've come to his territory. His focus then shifts to Shadow. Both Juggernaut and Yukime recognize Shadow as the one who caused chaos in Midgar's capital and defeated corrupt priests. Juggernaut decides to skip the formalities and breaks down the door to the Crimson Tower. Shadow comments on the red moon, saying the frenzy has begun. Yukime wonders if he's talking about the ghoul outbreak, while Juggernaut recalls a legend about a red moon that caused 3 kingdoms to fall. Thinking it could be an interesting challenge, Juggernaut heads inside. Yukime mentions that she's heard Shadow helped some of her people in the Pleasure District and hopes they can remain on good terms. The White Devil is impressed by how easily Juggernaut broke down the Crimson Tower's door, which was supposed to be indestructible. He sees Juggernaut and Yukime as monsters and decides to target Shadow, thinking Shadow is weaker since he can't sense any power from him. However, Shadow effortlessly slices the White Devil into pieces before repeating his comment about the red moon and the frenzy. The scene shifts to Beta, who is in the Crimson Tower's library. As she reads through ancient texts, she concludes that the technology of the time must have been very advanced, and the church had incredible knowledge. She wonders how the church learned to use power from demons. Suddenly, she hears noise and sees Claire and Marie enter the library. They explain that they've been led into a trap and ended up here. Beta considers her options, thinking she was meant to eliminate any witnesses but isn't sure she can do that now. She tells Claire and Marie that she has no intention of fighting them, which surprises Claire since she didn't know Beta knew who she was. Beta explains that she won the Bushin Festival. Marie suggests they don't need to fight Beta since she's not a vampire and they don't have time to waste. Marie also points out that Beta isn't alone. There are 3 other Shadow Garden members with her, including Rose. Claire, still confused, asks Beta who she is. Beta introduces herself as a Shadow Garden member and explains that she's studying the possessed, hoping to get a blood sample from a progenitor vampire. Marie asks how vampires are connected to the possessed. Beta explains that, according to their theory, vampires and the possessed have a shared origin but branched into different bloodlines. To test this, they need to study the Blood Queen. Marie is offended and says it's blasphemy to the progenitors. Beta, unaware that Marie is a legendary vampire hunter, doesn't understand why she's upset. Beta reassures them that they'll stay out of each other's way, but Claire interrupts, asking if there's a cure for the possessed. Beta assures Claire, but Claire still doesn't fully understand. Claire urges them to leave quickly so they can save her brother, Sid. Rose tries to ask if Sid is okay, but Beta stops her, reminding her not to overstep. Beta then asks Marie if she's given up on finding Haven. After Claire and Marie leave, Beta expresses her disappointment in Rose, who apologizes. Beta reminds Rose that their mission is to retrieve a sample and that Lord Shadow will take care of the Blood Queen. Elsewhere in the tower, Marie and Claire defeat a vampire by stabbing it in the heart. Claire is surprised that even an immortal vampire can die this way. Marie explains that vampires are vulnerable to sunlight and urges Claire to hurry. As they continue, Claire suspects Marie is hiding something and wonders what Haven means. Marie turns the question around, saying Claire seems to be hiding something too. Marie mentions that everyone knows the possessed can never be human again, so she's curious why Claire would ask about a cure. She says that everyone has secrets and suggests they avoid asking each other about them. Suddenly, they feel tremors and see Juggernaut defeating powerful vampires. Marie warns Claire that Juggernaut is incredibly strong and they should avoid fighting him. But Juggernaut notices them and strikes Claire in the face, then punches Marie, finding them unexpectedly tough. Enraged, Claire stabs Juggernaut in the leg, making him realize she's stronger than he thought. She's furious, saying he's only the second person to ever hit her like that, but she notices that Marie is badly hurt. Marie, now weakened, asks Claire if she can drink her blood to heal. Claire, embarrassed, agrees, and after drinking, Marie gains new strength and attacks Juggernaut with renewed energy. Despite her best efforts, Juggernaut dodges her attacks and lands a powerful blow on both Marie and Claire. The blood's healing effects are slow, and as Juggernaut prepares to finish them off, Shadow suddenly appears, kicking Juggernaut out of the Crimson Tower. Before leaving, Shadow cryptically warns that the frenzy has begun and time is running out. Claire wonders if Shadow came to help, but Marie, recognizing him as the criminal wanted by the church, is unsure. Marie apologizes to Claire for drinking her blood, and Claire, blushing, reassures her that it's fine. Curious, Claire asks Marie if she's a vampire, and Marie confirms, promising to explain everything. She begins to share her story. Over 1,000 years ago, vampires ruled and hunted humans like animals. But humans learned to exploit vampire weaknesses and fought back. The hunters became the hunted. At this time, the Blood Queen, Lady Elizabeth, ruled a small human village, dreaming of a world where vampires and humans could live peacefully together. She even gave up blood drinking, and over time, her followers did too. This caused them to lose their powers, but they could walk in sunlight and the thirst for blood faded, allowing them to lead peaceful lives. However, Elizabeth's thirst for blood never completely left, and sunlight still burned her skin. Despite these challenges, she clung to her dream of building a safe haven for both vampires and humans. Then the Night of the Red Moon came, a rare event every 1,000 years that grants vampires immense power. On this night, Queen Elizabeth's bloodlust returned, and Crimson, another vampire, offered her a single drop. This sent Elizabeth into a bloodthirsty frenzy that lasted for 3 days, destroying her haven and causing chaos in 3 kingdoms. Marie barely survived by drinking the blood of the fallen. When Marie finally confronted Elizabeth, the queen realized her mistake and asked Marie to scatter her ashes in the ocean to prevent her from ever being revived. Elizabeth pierced her own heart, ending her life. But, unlike other vampires, she didn't turn to ash. Crimson took her body and spared Marie's life, hoping she would join him when the next red moon came. Now, Crimson is trying to use Elizabeth's power for his own ambitions, and Marie is tormented by her failure to fulfill the queen's last wish for peace. Claire, feeling a connection with Marie, confides in her that she might be turning into a monster herself. She had come to help her brother but now feels she's only putting him in more danger. Still, she encourages Marie not to give up on her dream, saying it wasn't a mistake to try to create a haven for both vampires and humans. Together, they vow to defeat Crimson and save Elizabeth. Marie thanks Claire for her encouragement and promises to help save Sid, but Claire insists that she'll handle that part on her own. Meanwhile, Shadow is in the Crimson Tower's treasury, impressed by the vampire's wealth. He decides to pocket 1,000 coins, figuring they're easy to carry. Shadow, frustrated by arriving late to fights recently, decides this time he'll show up first and put on a memorable display of power. Elsewhere, Crimson begins the ritual to revive Queen Elizabeth, using a sacrifice to implant her heart. Just as he starts, Shadow intervenes, attacking Crimson and causing Elizabeth's heart to fall out of the sacrifice. After defeating Crimson, Shadow looks around, disappointed by the lack of a final boss. He wonders if he stumbled into a situation meant for a group battle rather than a solo showdown. He decides to explore the underground and, if nothing exciting happens, grab more treasure and leave. Back at the top of the tower, Elizabeth's heart begins to react, and Marie and Claire finally reach the peak. They begin searching for Elizabeth and Sid, with Marie wondering what chaos has been set in motion. As Claire reaches the top, she is unexpectedly stabbed by the blooming heart, and from within Queen Elizabeth emerges, consumed by the blood moon's power. In her frenzied state, Elizabeth bites Claire. But just as things look dire, members of the Shadow Garden quickly arrive, freeing Claire from Elizabeth's grip and decapitating the queen. Number 664, who notices that Claire is still alive but critically injured, realizes that she needs more than just first aid to survive. Beta, seeing that Shadow hasn't arrived yet and likely has more pressing matters, feels responsible for saving Claire as Shadow's sister. She orders 664 to continue treating Claire and asks 665 and Rose to provide backup. A fierce battle breaks out between Shadow Garden and Elizabeth, who quickly overpowers Rose and 665. Beta manages to slice off Elizabeth's hand and blast her back with magic, but Marie, watching from the sidelines, knows this won't be enough. Elizabeth always regenerates slowly due to her low blood pressure, but now, as she recovers, she releases her full magical power, which is even stronger than Alpha's. Seeing this overwhelming power, Yukime decides to leave, while Juggernaut steps in but is immediately flung against a wall by Elizabeth. Elizabeth then attacks everyone, controlling droplets of blood to strike, severely injuring Juggernaut and the Shadow Garden members. Beta realizes that Elizabeth is growing stronger by absorbing their blood, so she orders Rose to take Claire and escape. Beta tells Rose that she still has a mission to complete and must survive. However, when Beta tries to confront Elizabeth, she discovers that Elizabeth has somehow gained control over the possessed blood inside the Shadow Garden members, triggering transformations in them. Claire is also affected, and her body begins to deteriorate, turning into a formless goop. In her mindscape, Claire meets Aurora, who explains that the possession she feared was actually cured a long time ago, though Claire doesn't know who did it. Aurora explains that Claire's blood has split into two distinct types, one linked to the possessed and the other to the progenitor vampire. Both bloodlines are powerful but unstable, and Claire's body is struggling to adapt. A strange mark appears on Claire's hand, which Aurora says will help her manage her powers. Before Aurora can explain more, she runs out of time. When Claire asks who Aurora is and why she's helping her, Aurora reveals that she's helping because Claire belongs to Shadow. Back in the real world, Claire transforms into Aurora, who now has control of Claire's body. Aurora, feeling free, quickly takes stock of the situation. Beta, surprised by the transformation, asks what happened to Claire. Aurora reassures her, explaining that she is just altering her appearance, similar to how Shadow changes his. Seeing Aurora as a new threat, Elizabeth launches another blood attack. But Aurora calmly stops the droplets mid-air and turns them against Elizabeth, starting an intense battle of blood manipulation. As the fight rages on, Juggernaut and Yukime watch in awe, seeing how over-the-top the battle between Elizabeth and Aurora is. Aurora tells Elizabeth she'll show her the most powerful move in existence, attempting Shadow's signature atomic attack. However, Aurora fails to complete it, as her current body isn't strong enough to handle the power. Elizabeth regenerates fully, and Aurora declares her job is done. She was only stalling until Shadow arrived. Just then, Shadow appears, announcing that it's time for the final showdown. Elizabeth launches her blood attacks again, but Shadow skillfully counters them with his slime suit. Marie is stunned, watching how Shadow can stand up to Queen Elizabeth, and she starts to think he's even more powerful than the feared Witch of Calamity. Beta, on the other hand, wonders why Shadow is prolonging the fight instead of finishing Elizabeth in one strike. However, as Elizabeth's attacks start to endanger the Shadow Garden members, Shadow steps in to protect them, making Beta believe he's doing this out of deep care for them. Shadow says he can't afford to lose a single one, which Beta takes as proof of his concern. But it turns out that Shadow is actually referring to his beloved gold coins, which he's protecting. As Shadow and Elizabeth clash in close combat, their moves are awe-inspiring, especially for 664 and 665, who are amazed by their lord's power. Juggernaut wonders aloud how Shadow is managing to fly during the battle. After a while, Shadow decides the fight has gone on long enough. Elizabeth asks for his name, and without hesitation, Shadow activates his ultimate move, Recovery Atomic. This powerful attack not only cures everyone who had transformed into a ghoul or showed signs of possession but also heals their injuries and nullifies the effects of the Blood Moon. Beta is confident that Ada will be thrilled with all the data they've gathered, and with the mission complete, Shadow Garden begins to leave the scene. Marie is finally able to reunite with Queen Elizabeth, while Juggernaut contemplates the idea of challenging Shadow Garden again in the future, wondering if it might be an interesting fight. Meanwhile, Sid's friends, Goldie and Quentin, wait at the train station, disappointed that their personal goals didn't pan out. Claire says goodbye to Marie, and Sid reflects on all that's happened. He muses that ghouls, vampires, and the possessed are all just different forms of magic overload, which can be cured easily, though some afflictions are beyond help. On the train ride home, Claire confides in Sid that she needs to understand the special powers in her left hand. Sid reassures her, promising to support her no matter what path she chooses. Secretly, Sid thinks Claire's special powers are probably just part of her imagination, but he understands her need to figure things out for herself. Claire then asks Sid if he knows about Shadow. Sid nonchalantly answers that he's the guy who burned down their school, brushing it off as no big deal. As the train departs, Sid reflects on the challenges Claire will face in the future. He's confident she'll come through them stronger, but he also feels a bit disappointed that he only recovered 500 gold coins during the mission, though it's still a decent amount. With their adventure winding down, Sid considers the Lawless City a convenient place to return to in case he ever needs to solve a financial problem, thinking of it as his own personal piggy bank. The scene shifts to Shadow, now meeting with Yuki Mei on a train. He asks her about the topic she wanted to discuss, but their conversation is quickly interrupted by bandits looting a train carrying Mitsugoshi goods. The leader of the bandits mocks the workers, revealing that their boss, Garter, controls all buying and selling in Midgar and has grown tired of Mitsugoshi's success. The worker defends Garter, calling him a respectable man, president of a major corporate alliance, and a generous donor to the church, but the bandit leader dismisses this, hinting that even the most righteous people have dark sides. Before anything else can happen, Shadow Garden arrives, and the workers reveal they are part of the organization. The bandits are swiftly taken down by Shadow Garden's members. Alpha reflects that this move will expose the underworld figures connected to the church. Meanwhile, Skell and Poe show off their new Mitsugoshi clothes to Sid, bragging about the latest fashion. Sid, however, realizes that the designs must have come from Zeta and that the girls are behind these trends. As Skell notices the Mitsugoshi logo peeling off his clothes, Poe points out that underneath is a cheaper shop's logo. They realize the Mitsugoshi brand is likely fake, as the real logo is much more intricate. Sid, reflecting on his own wardrobe, realizes that his clothes, curated by Alpha and the other girls, are part of their fashion influence. He understands that their designs are likely upsetting major corporations, stealing business from them, and decides it's time to address this situation. Later that night, Shadow dresses as a secret agent, announcing that tonight the world will know his name. He meets with Yuki Mei, who is thrilled to have him join their ranks. Shadow requests that she call him John Smith instead of Shadow. Yuki Mei reveals that Garter recently called a meeting of the major corporate alliance, discussing how they plan to strengthen their defenses against Mitsugoshi. She hints that Mitsugoshi's downfall might come sooner than expected. John reassures her that their plan hasn't changed, that while Mitsugoshi and the alliance destroy each other, they will be there to seize everything. Yuki Mei warns John Smith, Shadow, about Get-Tan, the Sword Devil, a dangerous underworld swordsman who has taken control of the corporate alliance. She cautions him that Get-Tan will stop at nothing to get what he wants. As John leaves, Yuki Mei reflects on the ongoing conflict and wonders who will come out victorious. In the capital, major stores are holding an autumn sale, and Poe and Skell are having a great time snatching up cheap clothes. Sid watches them and realizes that Alpha and the girls have gone too far by undermining local distributors, selling exclusive products without regard for the big corporations, and making powerful enemies in the process. He understands that Mitsugoshi's future looks bleak because they've alienated everyone in the industry. Sid plans to crush Mitsugoshi and take down the major corporate alliance. He's determined to start fresh, building a new corporation from the ashes, and he'll invite Alpha and the girls to join him in upper management. He intends to change the name of Mitsugoshi and reshape it in his own image. Later, Po is paying for clothes he accidentally ruined during the sale, and Sid notices something strange about the bills the shopkeeper gave as change. Po mentions that these are new bills issued by the major corporate alliance. Sid becomes curious about what kind of money they've been using before. Po shows him bills from Mitsugoshi Bank, explaining that they could only use them in Mitsugoshi stores before, but now they're accepted citywide. Sid suddenly recalls a conversation he once had with the girls about banks and credit creation, though he didn't fully understand it at the time. Now, he realizes the girls must have used this knowledge to establish their own bank and currency. Sid examines the bills and notices the differences. Mitsugoshi bills have multicolored printing and detailed watermarks, while the Alliance bills are simpler and have crude printing. Sid recalls trying to replicate bills as a child using a printing machine, and now, as a secret agent, he realizes that it's possible to replicate these bills. He gets an idea and runs off with the money, eager to put his plan into motion. Meanwhile, John Smith, Shadow, discusses the concept of credit with Yuki Mei. He explains that the value of gold coins has been inflated by the illusion of credit, with paper money, worth less than a copper coin, being seen as more valuable than actual gold. He shows Yuki Mei the Mitsugoshi and Alliance bills, asking if she notices any differences. Yuki Mei observes that Mitsugoshi bills have a watermark, while the Alliance bills are rougher in design. John realizes the Alliance's bills are easy to duplicate, and his plan is to create counterfeit bills to make a fortune. Yuki Mei points out that the Alliance's bills are only circulating in the royal capital, and if they forge them, the authorities would quickly trace the fake bills back to their source. John, initially shocked by her insight, soon realizes that Yuki Mei is thinking strategically. He wants the fake bills to be discovered on purpose, causing panic among the citizens who would rush to the banks to exchange the fake bills for gold. This will lead to a massive profit as they monopolize the situation. Yuki Mei realizes this must be John's plan all along, but John seems unaware of her thoughts, asking again if that's really what she believes. Yuki Mei admits that's what she thinks. As John leaves the train at the next station, Yuki Mei reflects on the conversation. She believes John was testing her sincerity, and had she given in to pressure and spoken thoughtlessly, it could have been disastrous. Meanwhile, Shadow Garden is seen eliminating a carriage driver to steal his carriage. Back in the capital, Sid is enjoying some ramen and savoring the thrill of having a new secret identity. While eating, he notices that he's feeding someone beside him, and to his surprise, it's Delta. She asks for more food, and Sid gladly gives it to her. He then offers her a piggyback ride, and Delta comments that Sid smells like foxes. Sid casually replies that he's been out hunting foxes, and Delta expresses her desire to hunt with him. Sid then asks what Delta is doing in the capital, and she answers that she's been hunting. When he asks why, Delta reveals that Alpha told her to hunt. Sid wonders what Delta has been hunting, and she eagerly replies that she's been hunting bandits. She asks if Sid enjoys hunting bandits, and while Sid admits he does, he explains that he's unable to do so right now. Delta presses him to hunt with her, and Sid realizes that Delta must have come to the capital because Alpha wanted to meet with her. Delta remembers Alpha had indeed invited her to see her. Sid urges Delta to hurry and meet Alpha, but Delta wonders what will happen to their bandit hunt. Meanwhile, Garter informs Get Tan that the soldiers sent after Mitsugoshi have all been killed. Get Tan, unimpressed by the bandits' performance, decides to send in the Clovers, an elite group of assassins handpicked by him. Garter believes that with the Clovers on the job, Mitsugoshi's secrets will soon be theirs. Back in the capital, Shadow and Delta are out hunting bandits. Shadow is frustrated with Delta's chaotic hunting style, which is effective but lacks the thrill of a proper battle. One of the bandits, Zabra, recognizes Delta as Sarah and introduces himself as her big brother. Delta notices he smells like her father, and Zabra expresses surprise that she's still alive, considering their father had hunted her after she was possessed. Delta responds that she's just good at hide and seek. Zabra begs for his life, mentioning that he now works for Get Tan, but Delta kills him without hesitation. Shadow asks if she's sure about this, and Delta coldly replies that she has no need for a weak brother. She explains that her father, the chief of their clan, has many lovers and over 1,000 children, so losing one won't matter to him. In their clan, only the strong survive. Shadow reflects on her ruthless nature, understanding it as typical of a Therianthrope. On their way back, Shadow mentions wanting to visit the Therianthrope lands one day. Delta jokingly suggests he could become their chief if he defeats her father and takes many lovers to make their clan the strongest. Shadow quickly dismisses the idea. Meanwhile, Get-Tan learns that Zabra has been defeated. Garter mentions their numbers are thinning, and if this continues, it could affect their public enterprises. He also points out that they've invested a lot in establishing their bank and currency, and wonders if it's time to cut their losses. Get-Tan, however, asserts that Zabra was the weakest of the Clovers, and orders Garter to summon the remaining 3 assassins, convinced that Mitsugoshi is tougher than expected. He now understands why the cult labeled them a threat. Elsewhere, Gamma reports to Alpha that they've been successful in minimizing damage to their transport trains and are dominating the market. She notes that the major corporate alliance is struggling with their paper money and credit. Alpha agrees but warns Gamma not to take actions that could link them to Shadow Garden, as it could lead to a loss of trust. Nue enters, mentioning unwanted guests, and Gamma speculates that Get-Tan may be losing patience. Alpha wonders if Gettan's Therianthrope nature is causing him to act rashly. Though Alpha initially suggests Nue handle the guests, Gamma asks for permission to take care of them herself. This surprises everyone, as Gamma isn't known for her combat abilities, so Alpha asks Omega and Kai to accompany her on the mission. Together, they set off to deal with the intruders, with Alpha confident that Omega and Kai will support Gamma. The invaders turn out to be Gettan's Clovers. They're surprised at how easy it was to infiltrate, suspecting that the security guarding their transports is stretched too thin. One of the Clovers mentions their target is Manager Luna. Just in time, Gamma, Omega, and Kai arrive to confront them. Omega and Kai each face off against one of the Clovers, while Gamma takes on the remaining one. The Clover facing Gamma believes he's the strongest of the group and that he should easily defeat her, considering she appears to be alone. He attacks, but his blows barely affect her. Gamma then uses her slime blade to strike, but can't land a hit. The Clover recognizes her speed but dismisses her as an amateur. Gamma identifies his footwork as part of the Liek Tenroi fencing style and believes she can counter it, but still can't land a successful blow. The Clover mocks her for being an amateur. When he attacks her with his blade, it barely affects her, and the blade gets disfigured. The Clover is confused, wondering what's going on. Gamma realizes he's a skilled warrior to even land a hit on her, so she decides to unleash her full magic power. She recalls Lord Shadow's advice to channel her energy into her attacks, using her extraordinarily high stats, and she prepares to do just that. However, as she attempts her attack, she stumbles and falls onto some rubble, causing an accidental explosion. She tries to imply that the Clover had set a trap for her, but he quickly retreats, clearly not wanting to continue the fight. As he calls his men back, Gamma's allies, Omega and Kai, show that they've already dealt with the rest of the Clover's forces. Gamma declares that she now understands the secret behind the Clover's strength and vows to show him her full power. She attempts to strike again, but once more falls over. This time, however, her sword manages to hit the fleeing Clover, killing him by accident. Gamma tries to play off her accidental victory over the Clover as part of her plan. The scene then shifts to Get-Tan, who is informed by Garter that the Clovers haven't returned yet. Garter also mentions that they haven't heard from the lookout team sent after them. He adds that some members of the major corporate alliance may have ties with Mitsugoshi, which could prompt them to speak out about the situation. Get-Tan orders Garter to silence them, and Garter heads off to take care of it. Get-Tan reflects on his earlier mistakes, realizing that relying on bandits was foolish. He wishes he could have used some of the children, but the cult is running low on resources, especially after the deaths of Xenon and the Old Man. He decides this is the perfect time for him to show his power, considering the major corporate alliance is just a pawn in his grand scheme. He only needs them to stay afloat long enough for his plans to be completed. Get-Tan recalls a past encounter with a bandit slayer, the one responsible for taking his eyesight, and the scene cuts to Sid and Alexia. Sid and Alexia are sparring, and as usual, Alexia easily beats him. Sid praises her swordsmanship, and they later stop to buy some dumplings while chatting. Sid comments that Alexia will continue to improve as long as she keeps going, wondering if it's due to a shift in her mindset or if she's figured something out. Alexia admits that she still feels the need for more power. Sid doesn't ask why, but Alexia explains anyway. She shares that Rose has gone off on her own, and the king of Oriana is dead. Throughout all of this, she felt powerless, unable to do anything but watch. She says she needs more strength because, as the world keeps moving forward, she fears being left behind if she doesn't keep up. Time feels like it's speeding up for her now that she's actively choosing to move forward. She comments that it must be nice to be as carefree as Sid and hopes he can remain that way for his entire life. The scene then shifts to John Smith, who is having ramen at a stall. He meets one of Yuki Mei's acquaintances, who tells him that their production is complete. Later, Yuki Mei informs John that they've set up their counterfeit production unit in an abandoned mine, once controlled by Viscount Grease but now run by a disintegrated local magistrate. The area is undermanned and lacks proper inspection. Yuki Mei reveals that they are exporting the fake bills to the lawless city and will later use a disguised distribution channel to introduce them into the royal capital of Midgar. John examines both the real and counterfeit bills and easily identifies the fake, noting that the fake uses coarser paper and has different ink bleed patterns compared to the real bills. John tells Yuki Mei that he doesn't need her to point out any more differences, as they both know one is fake, but they can't tell which one it is. Yuki Mei says she'll start from scratch, but Shadow interjects, saying there's no need since only he can tell the difference between the two bills. Yuki Mei says she'll start distributing the fake bills immediately. She also mentions that once more of these bills are in circulation, the authorities will try to trace their source, and she's counting on John to handle that situation as planned. She asks him to leave Getten's fate to her, revealing that he took everything from her, her mother, friends, and village, and now it's her turn to take everything from him. John agrees but warns her to be careful not to go down the wrong path. Meanwhile, Alpha and the others learn about the counterfeit bills. Alpha believes their decision to accept the competitor's notes has paid off. Gamma mentions that the original plan was to destabilize the currency, but Alpha is concerned about how much fake money is already in circulation. Gamma assures her that there's not much yet, and the customers who've used them didn't realize they were fake. Alpha wonders if the Alliance knows about it, and Gamma assures her they haven't noticed yet and are still issuing more bills without any caution. Alpha instructs Gamma to make the Alliance realize the existence of the fake bills, warning that if the public finds out, it could lead to a crisis and shake trust in paper money, which would hurt their business as well. Alpha speculates that this could be part of a larger plan to collapse the credit system, which would also harm the Alliance. She orders Gamma to investigate where the counterfeit bills are coming from and who is behind the scheme. Meanwhile, Garter informs Get Tan about the counterfeit bills, mentioning that a cashier at one of their corporate stores discovered one. Get Tan asks which bill is fake, and Garter guesses it's the poorly made one, although he's unsure. Get Tan orders him to find out where the fake bills came from. As Garter leaves, Get Tan reflects on the fact that the number of counterfeit bills in circulation has likely already surpassed the Alliance's assets, which are supposed to back their credit. He realizes that if the public were to learn about the fake bills, it would cause panic and doubt the authenticity of the real bills, leading to a collapse of the credit system. This was part of the cult's plan to bankrupt both the Alliance and Mitsugoshi, though Get Tan worries it was supposed to happen after the cult recovered its hidden assets within the Alliance. He's concerned that if the plan unfolds too early, it could lead to significant financial loss. The scene shifts to numbers 664, 665, and Rose boarding a train from the lawless city, which is transporting the counterfeit bills. 664 tells her team that their mission is to recover the fake bills while other teams search for the counterfeiters. She orders Rose to follow her command and not act independently, as she's the leader. As 664, 665, and Rose board the train, they notice the lack of security, but Rose spots some threads inside the train. Before they can act, John captures 664 and 665 using his threads. 664 tries to cut the threads with her slime knife, but they're too strong. Rose asks who John is, and he introduces himself. When Rose tries to attack, John stops her with his threads, explaining that he knew they would figure out his plan first, but it's still too early for them to know more. He then throws them off the train. Rose tries to chase after it, but 664 stops her, warning that they'll fall into the same trap without a plan. As the train disappears, 664 suggests reporting the incident to Gamma, and Rose wonders why she feels so weak. The scene shifts to 664, 665, and Rose reporting to Alpha and Gamma about their encounter with John Smith. Alpha wonders if John is a new member of the Named Children, but Gamma suggests he could also be from the Lawless City. Rose informs them that John Smith is highly skilled, possibly even stronger than the Seven Shadows. 664 asks Rose to stop talking about it, but she keeps going, prompting 664 to take her out of the room. Alpha realizes they now have another problem to deal with, and Gamma mentions she's assigned Zeta to look into their previous discussion. Since Zeta hasn't reported back yet, Gamma assumes the mission is going well. Alpha hopes they can finish everything quickly so they can relax, and orders Gamma to send Delta to deal with John Smith. The scene then cuts to John Smith aboard the train, where he notices Delta chasing after it. Delta enters the train and tries to attack John, but he uses his threads to block her every move. Frustrated, Delta destroys an entire train car in an attempt to attack him from above. However, John uses the rubble she created to trap her. As Delta struggles to break free, she realizes John is actually Shadow. She jumps on him, and Shadow asks why she's here. Delta reveals she's hunting John Smith on Alpha's orders and asks if he's actually John Smith. John confirms he is. Delta admits she can't defeat him and will report back to Alpha. John tells her to wait, explaining that he's on a secret mission, one that only he can complete. Delta thinks it sounds cool and offers to help, but John insists it's something only he can do. He warns her that if she reports his mission to Alpha, it will no longer be a secret. Delta explains that Alpha will be mad at her if she fails, but John offers her a new mission, reminding her that his orders take precedence over Alpha's. Delta wonders if this means Alpha won't be mad at her, and John assures her that she won't be. He promises a reward if she completes the mission, which excites her. She asks if John will do anything she wants, and he replies that he will, as long as he's able to. John thinks for a moment and then tells her to go to the Lawless City and defeat the Juggernaut in the Black Tower. Delta doesn't fully understand, but she's excited about the reward, so she heads off to hunt the Juggernaut. John, thinking about his own plans to save the world, believes Delta will be back by the time the weather warms up. The scene transitions to Gamma informing Alpha that a piece of Delta's clothing was found at the site of a violent battle. They conclude that Delta would never abandon a mission, so they assume she must be dead. Alpha asks them to continue searching, hoping they can at least recover her body. Gamma then reports that the number of counterfeit bills is increasing, and soon citizens will start doubting the value of paper money, which will also affect Mitsugoshi. She suggests they need a plan to handle the situation. Gamma proposes eliminating John Smith, and Alpha reflects that John likely planned to trigger a credit crisis all along. While they and the Alliance fight each other, John Smith aims to take everything for himself. Gamma is surprised by this realization. The scene cuts to messengers from the Cult of Diablos informing Getan that they're concerned about the counterfeit bills, which are speeding up the credit collapse, causing severe losses for the cult. They blame Getan, which infuriates him. In a fit of rage, Getan kills one of the messengers. He wonders if John Smith is behind this, and the surviving messenger confirms that John Smith is the name they found during their investigation. Getan orders Garter to set up checkpoints to inspect every cargo going in and out of the royal capital, but Garter informs him they don't have the authority to do so. In his anger, Getan kills the second messenger and commands Garter to do whatever it takes to find the source of the counterfeit bills. The scene shifts to Iris meeting Alexia, who is carrying some books. Iris is surprised to see Alexia at the castle and asks what she's doing there. Alexia explains that since the academy is still under construction, she decided to search for specialized books in the archives. Iris asks what kind of books Alexia is studying, and Alexia reveals they cover various subjects. Iris wonders if Alexia is aiming to become a scholar, but Alexia clarifies that she's researching where she should wield her sword. She admits that since the spring, she's realized blindly swinging her sword won't change anything. Instead, she wants to use her sword where it matters most. To do that, she must first earn the right to stand in that place, and sometimes the path to that requires starting in a place where a sword isn't needed. As Alexia talks, Iris abruptly leaves the conversation. The scene then shifts to Beta informing Shadow that rumors about the counterfeit bills are already spreading through the capital. She predicts that the royal family will soon be forced to take action. Additionally, the unauthorized checkpoints set up by the Alliance have only caused more problems. Beta notices Shadow taking notes and asks what he's doing. Shadow explains that he's recording information because it will impact the future. Beta continues her report, but as Shadow makes some calculations, he looks confused, saying that something doesn't add up. Beta wonders if she made a mistake in her investigation, but Shadow dismisses it, saying there's no time to investigate again. Beta then shares another update. Delta was sent to deal with John Smith, but they've lost contact with her and believe she's been killed. Shadow is shocked, realizing he might have caused a misunderstanding. He assures Beta that Delta has just gone somewhere far away. Beta thinks Shadow is trying to downplay the situation and wonders if he can handle John Smith. Shadow replies that he has other matters to deal with. Beta then reminds him that he had instructed them to encrypt their notes. When she tries to read them, she finds she can't. Shadow reveals that he's written them in 5 different languages he created. Beta asks him to teach her, and Shadow gives her a note, saying he'll teach her if she can decipher it. The scene shifts to one of the major corporate alliance's checkpoints. John easily bypasses it using his threads. Alpha arrives shortly after and confronts him. They engage in a fierce battle, with Alpha realizing from John's movements that he is Shadow. She asks why he's doing this, and John responds that he has abandoned that name. Alpha then asks about Delta, and John says he sent her somewhere far away. Alpha is dissatisfied with this vague answer and transforms into a mist-like form using her magic. She admits that she doesn't fully understand Shadow's actions but wants to support him and be there for the man who saved her life. She wonders if Shadow no longer needs her. John reassures her that she will understand once everything is over. Determined not to hold him back, Alpha continues to evade his threads, but Shadow catches her sword. He notes that while her mist form is impressive, she still needs to materialize to attack. He blows her away, saying mist has no mass. Alpha pleads for him to return, asking him not to leave her alone. The scene then shifts to John meeting Yukime, who informs him that nearly all the counterfeit bills have been exchanged for gold. She mentions that the Alliance's coffers must be almost empty. Yukime also mentions that she's been gathering authentic banknotes, and once she exchanges them, the Alliance will collapse. The citizens will rush to reclaim their money, but the Alliance won't be able to meet the demand, leading to its downfall. This will also affect Mitsugoshi, causing businesses that have supported the kingdom's economy to crumble. Yukime explains that the government will be overwhelmed by the chaos caused by the counterfeit bills, giving them the perfect opportunity to destroy the evidence and vanish. John agrees, thinking this is the perfect time to end everything. Yukime then expresses her gratitude to John for helping her execute the plan, revealing her past. She recalls that when she was young, she lived peacefully with her mother in a village. At that time, the great hero Shiva had fallen, and the Therianthrope lands were engulfed in war. Powerful clans fought for dominance, and the weaker clans struggled to survive. Yukime's clan, the Spirit Foxes, had arranged a marriage with the Great Wolves clan, led by Gettan, the son of the clan's patriarch. Yukime and Gettan admired each other, and the village supported their union. However, war broke out, and their village was destroyed. Gettan proposed they survive by taking special pills that would grant immense strength to face the larger clans. Yukime's mother refused, and the others sided with her. As a result, Gettan killed her mother and demanded that Yukime pledge her allegiance to the cult. When she resisted and tried to fight back, Gettan nearly killed her too but spared her life, telling her that if they didn't take from others, they would be taken from. Yukime lost everything that day, her family, her life, and ended up on the battlefield as a prostitute. She eventually used all her strength to rise to the top of the lawless city. Now, her true mission is clear, to find Gettan and take everything from him in revenge for the pain he caused her. She asks John to trust her and give her time to confront Gettan, and he agrees, letting her go. Meanwhile, Delta successfully destroys the Black Tower, and in the capital, businesses begin rejecting the Alliance's banknotes. Citizens line up at the banks to exchange their money, but one by one, the Alliance's banks close. Rumors spread, and people start to believe the banknotes are worthless scraps of paper. Garter informs Gettan that although they still don't know where the counterfeit bills are coming from, they have tracked down the mastermind, Yukime. A carriage from the Snow Fox Corporation, linked to her, was used to transport the gold exchanged for the fake bills. Get Tan, dismissing the situation as coincidence, recalls hearing about Yukimei's fall into prostitution. However, when he hears the sound of bells, he suddenly realizes that it's the bell he gave her. He orders Garter to stop the carriage immediately. The scene shifts to Alpha speaking with Gamma. Alpha expresses that Shadow no longer needs her, as he has surpassed everything she could offer. Gamma responds by stating that the downfall of the major corporate alliance is inevitable. Their stores are closed, citizens are rioting to exchange their money, and the banks are running out of funds. Gamma reflects that it would have been easier if they had a stockpile of gold to reassure the people. But Alpha, unfazed, says it no longer matters. Shadow orchestrated the counterfeit bills, causing the collapse of the credit system. He wanted this to happen, and now he has abandoned them. Gamma refuses to believe this, but Alpha believes they failed to meet Shadow's expectations. She remembers how he gave them the best resources and knowledge, but they didn't use them properly, and this is the result. Gamma remains in denial, while Alpha recalls her promise to give Shadow her life. Just then, Nue enters, noticing the somber mood of Alpha and Gamma. Nue reports that they've uncovered evidence showing Get Tan was leading an operation for the cult of Diablos and had been planning to circulate counterfeit bills to bankrupt Mitsugoshi. Gamma is shocked, realizing that Get Tan was willing to destroy everything, even himself, without knowing about their connection to Shadow Garden. She reflects that while they were fighting economic battles, Shadow had already seen the truth and acted independently. Alpha, putting everything together, realizes that Shadow orchestrated the entire situation. He changed his name, severed ties with them, and started circulating the counterfeit bills before the cult could act. However, she still doesn't fully understand his motives. At this moment, Beta enters with a message from Shadow. She explains that Zeta decoded the message Shadow left behind. As Alpha reads it, a tear falls from her eye. The message is an apology from Shadow for turning traitor. He explains that to fulfill his plan, he had to forsake his old identity and print counterfeit bills with an accomplice. He mentions that the gold coins he recovered are stored in the same place where they helped him rescue his sister. He acknowledges that they might resent him for his actions, but insists it was for the best. Beta is astonished, and Gamma reflects that they should have known Shadow's true intentions. Shadow identified the cult's plot before anyone else and took action by circulating the fake bills ahead of time, collecting a large sum of money to ensure Mitsugoshi would survive the credit collapse. This would also weaken the cult, as they would lose the alliance's support. Beta realizes that Shadow's deep understanding of credit creation made this plan possible, and Alpha understands that Shadow hid his true identity to sever his connection to them, keeping the link between the counterfeit bills, Mitsugoshi, and Shadow Garden concealed. He built the counterfeit operation in a place they knew well, even marking the vault's location. As the group discusses, Gamma wonders about Delta's whereabouts. Moments later, Delta returns, and everyone is relieved to see that she is safe. Delta claims she went on a secret mission and can't disclose the details. Alpha quickly realizes that Shadow must have asked her to do something for him. The scene then shifts to John Smith, who is eliminating people trying to uncover the secret of the counterfeit bills. Despite the violence, he's unfazed, as Yukimei had told him she wasn't doing this for money, meaning he gets to keep all of it for himself. However, when he returns to his hideout, he discovers that all the money has vanished. The girls working for Yukimei inform him that they've lost contact with her and suspect Get Tan is behind this. Furious, John realizes that Get Tan might have stolen his money and vows to make him pay for taking something precious to him. The scene then cuts to a confrontation between Yukimei and Get Tan. She has him on his knees, and Get Tan, reflecting on his past, laments that if he had the same power Yukimei has now, no one would have been able to take from them. He can't accept defeat and insists that if he had more money and power, things could still work in his favor. Yukimei, despite everything, expresses that she doesn't know what happened to Get Tan but acknowledges that although he killed her mother, he also saved their village and her life. She hopes the man she once knew is still inside him. As she turns to leave, she bids him farewell, but Get Tan, desperate, uses a tear of Diablos to regain his strength and eyesight. He attacks Yukimei from behind, hoping for the kill. Just as he's about to strike, John appears and punches him, shocking Get Tan. He can't believe that John came to die at his hands willingly. The two engage in a fierce fight, with Get Tan thinking John is fighting for Yukimei, but John reveals that he only came to retrieve something precious to him. Yukimei, watching the fight, feels that it would be fine if John abandoned her, but his words, calling her precious, make her think he might truly be a compassionate man. John defeats Get Tan and then asks him if he has anything left to say. Get Tan, battered and broken, weakly declares that he has nothing left to say as he tries to use another tier of Diablos. However, John kicks him in the face and demands that he speak if he has anything to say. Get Tan weakly admits that he doesn't, but as John continues to beat him, he finally speaks, mentioning that John's power reminds him of the person who took his sight. He laments that if he had this kind of power, things could have been different. He explains that he never wanted to be taken advantage of and, in his final moments, points to Yukime, declaring her his treasure. Shortly after, Getten dies and John responds, "Her treasure is in good hands." John gently saves Yukime from collapsing and heals her wounds. As she regains consciousness, Yukime realizes it was John who saved her from Getten all those years ago. Overcome with emotion, she thanks him, tears streaming down her face. John, reflecting on Getten's final words, believes the coins might be buried beneath the snow. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Iris and the Dark Knights raiding the Alliance. They discover the vault is empty, and Iris orders Garter's arrest for his role in disrupting the marketplace. Back at her base, Yukime is welcomed by her workers, who are relieved to see her safe. They ask about John, and Yukime explains that he has gone to give Getten a proper burial. As Yukime inspects the empty vault, she receives a call from Alpha. Alpha, revealing herself as a member of Shadow Garden, tells Yukime that the Alliance has been destroyed, but they managed to recover what they needed before the royal investigation began. Alpha hands Yukime a letter from Getten. She admits the handwriting is difficult to read but believes it is addressed to her. Yukime comments that Getten's writing was always sloppy, as he wasn't the type to sit at a desk. Alpha explains that the cult of Diablos was behind Getten's fall. She describes the cult as a group that exploits people's weaknesses to drag them into darkness, and that Shadow Garden is working to stop them. Mitsugoshi, Alpha reveals, is actually a front for Shadow Garden, and Shadow has been pulling the strings from the beginning. Alpha apologizes for taking the gold coins but explains it was necessary for survival during the upcoming credit collapse. They have also taken control of the Alliance's outlets, and their dominance in the market will soon render the Alliance obsolete. Alpha adds that this was all part of Shadow's plan, and though Yukime may see Shadow as a traitor, they are ready to welcome her into their ranks. Yukime, considering the offer, realizes that Alpha intends to treat her as part of their inner circle. After some thought, Yukime agrees to join them. Meanwhile, Shadow and Delta are digging through the snow, hoping to find the buried money, but they find nothing. Shadow reflects on the silence from Yukime and the fact that Mitsugoshi is still doing well. Delta wonders what Shadow's next move will be after they finish digging, and Shadow tells her he will do what he can, preparing for a journey. He asks her to think about what she wants and let him know when he returns. He also acknowledges that his recent actions have likely made others angry, and they will need time to cool off. He plans to return nonchalantly at the end of winter, without apologizing, and act as if everything is normal. Shadow believes this will irritate them enough to give up. Delta, still digging, finds something but is unable to share her discovery with Shadow, as he has already left. The scene shifts to Skell and Poe, who are knocking on Sid's door but receive no answer. They discover the door is open and enter the room. They jokingly discuss it being a great day to pick up girls, but quickly realize Sid isn't there. Skell spots some exclusive Mitsugoshi Hot Springs tickets on Sid's desk, realizing these are highly coveted items that even wealthy nobles can't get. They speculate that if they use these tickets, their chances of attracting glamorous girls from Mitsugoshi will skyrocket. With 6 tickets in hand, they get excited about the possibilities. Skell and Poe arrive at Mitsugoshi and, with their 6 exclusive Hot Springs tickets in hand, invite Nue, who's working outside, to join them. She looks at the tickets and asks how they got their hands on such rare items, as these tickets are typically reserved for a select few. Skell casually explains that they were gifts from their good friend Sid and that he told them to take the tickets and ask the girls of Mitsugoshi out on a date. Nue wonders if they mean the young master Sid Kageno, and Skell and Poe confirm that they are referring to him. They then ask if she knows him, and Nue, irritated, tells them to be quiet. She suspects that Lord Shadow must be behind this, using Sid to send some kind of complicated message. Nue asks if Sid will be joining them, and Skell confirms he will be. Nue realizes that she never expected Shadow to use the students to send such a code and decides she must consult with the 7 Shadows about this. Before she leaves, Skell and Poe ask her if she's going to accept the date, and Nue, with frustration, says she will consider it. Meanwhile, at Shadow Garden, Alpha calls a meeting to discuss the Hot Springs invitation. She wonders what Shadow's true purpose is behind this move. She asks Ada, who designed the Mitsugoshi Hot Springs Resort, what it's all about. Ada explains that the resort is a luxury relaxation complex opening next week, themed around the legend of the Dragon's Tears. Alpha, not wanting the brochure-style explanation, asks Ada for more details. Epsilon remembers that Shadow once told them about the Dragon's Tears on a special day. This brings back a memory of when Shadow Garden fought against a group from the cult of Diablos. During the battle, a dying cult member mocked them, saying they would never find the Dragon's Tears. This got Shadow curious, so he asked the girls if they knew about the legend. They said it was mentioned in local stories. Shadow then told them to search the whole area. After 3 days of digging, Shadow suddenly left, likely to handle another secret task. The girls kept digging and eventually found a hot spring. They decided to build a resort there, though they felt Shadow's interest in the dragon's tears meant there was something more to it. Epsilon mentions they didn't find any dragon magic around, and Zeta suggests that dragon could be a symbol, maybe connected to the cult. Epsilon adds that they've wiped out all cult activity in the area, but Gamma points out they still need more information. Alpha thinks the Hot Springs Resort might hold the answers, so she plans to send some of the 7 Shadows on the mission. Epsilon points out that out of the 6 tickets, 3 will go to Shadow and his friends, meaning only 3 of them can go along. Beta wonders who will be chosen, and New A says that since she was invited by Shadow, she should be one of the 3. Alpha responds that only the 7 Shadows can handle the mission. After some debate on who should go, they decide by playing rock paper scissors to choose. The following week, Zeta, Beta, and Delta meet Skell and Poe outside the resort. Beta notices someone's missing, and Poe tries to change the subject. Zeta, frustrated, asks where Sid is, and Poe quickly says Sid is just running late. The girls laugh, realizing they should have been told that earlier. Skell, Poe, and the girls go to change into their swimsuits. Poe, feeling nervous, worries about the group being unbalanced and one girl being left out. He decides to stall by telling the girls that Sid will join them soon. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Marie also arrive, and Skell and Poe get excited, hoping today is the day they finally impress the girls. Meanwhile, the 7 Shadows are also getting ready in their swimsuits. Alpha is upset that Shadow hasn't shown up yet. Beta, eager to make up for past mistakes, recalls how she failed Shadow on their last 2 missions. Alpha wonders if Shadow won't come at all, but Gamma suggests he might have left everything in their hands. Alpha thinks Shadow could show up later, so they all need to be ready. The scene shifts to Skell, Poe, and 2 of the girls playing volleyball by the pool. Delta hits the ball at Zeta, knocking Skell into the pool. Delta and Zeta start arguing, while Gamma and Epsilon watch from a distance. Gamma thinks they should have been picked for the mission, but Alpha says they're just having fun, and maybe Shadow wanted them to take a break after all their battles. Alpha admits she can't completely understand Shadow's plan. Suddenly, Ada detects a strange magical energy underground. Back to Skell and Poe, they're floating in the pool, confused about where the girls went after the volleyball game. They guess they might have gone to the girls' bath. Poe explains that the resort has special baths where girls can bathe without swimsuits, and it's their job to check if they're bathing. Inside the girls' bath, Beta wonders if she doesn't prove herself on this mission, Shadow will only see her as a fragile elven princess. Zeta thinks about Shadow's true purpose, which always leads her back to the Dragon's Tears legend. The scene then shifts to the legend. Long ago, a kind princess saved a baby dragon separated from its family, and they grew up together. But when war came, the dragon fought to protect the princess, getting badly hurt. When the dragon returned, he found the princess's kingdom destroyed, and she was dying. The dragon begged her to open her eyes, but she could only shed 1 tear. The dragon cried so much that his tears flooded the land. Eventually, the princess woke up and found a healing stream of water, but the dragon was gone. She called for him, but he never came back. Zeta wonders if Shadow is interested in the hidden meaning of the legend. Ada suggests focusing on the water, but their research shows it's just regular hot spring water. Meanwhile, Skell and Poe try to sneak a peek into the girls' bath but get sprayed in the eyes by an anti-peeping system. As their tears fall into the hot spring, something strange happens. Ada realizes that the hot spring reacts to tears, and she starts to understand the significance of this discovery. Ada, noticing that Skell and Poe's tears don't cause a stronger reaction from the hot spring, begins to look for another way to make it work. Zeta reminds Ada that the legend focused on the princess's tears, and Ada suddenly remembers that Beta had called herself an elven princess earlier. This gives her an idea, and she starts to insult Beta to make her cry. When Beta finally sheds a tear, the water in the spring reacts strongly, and a dragon forms from the pool. Alpha, watching this, realizes that this was what Shadow had planned all along. The group quickly puts on their special slime suits, which are designed to hide their identities as Shadow Garden agents. Ada explains that the suits are colored to prevent anyone from recognizing them. The girls fight the water dragon, and Alpha delivers the final blow, causing golden tears to fall from the sky. Epsilon comments that this must have been Shadow's plan. As the dragon's soul ascends, Beta's tears are wiped away, and Alpha believes Shadow wanted to help the dragon's spirit find peace. The group pretends the dragon fight was all part of the Dragon's Tears legend and uses it as an opportunity to sell special merchandise for the resort's grand opening. Alpha is happy with how everything turned out, and Gamma notes that the damage to the resort wasn't too bad. The group thanks Shadow for giving them a surprise day off. Meanwhile, Skell and Poe have forgotten everything that happened at the resort and remain unaware of the events that took place. Elsewhere, Sid is staying at an inn in Oriana Kingdom. The innkeeper serves him tea and mentions how the soldiers took coffee and other luxuries for the war effort, expressing sympathy for Sid. Sid reflects on his journey, realizing that even though he's been following his desire to become the Eminence in Shadow, he still doesn't fully understand what that means. He wonders if he should continue on this path or change his direction. At the same time, numbers 664 and 665 are having breakfast nearby. Rose, who is also staying at the inn, has a nightmare where she kills her father. In the dream, he tells her he will never forgive her. She wakes up disturbed and thinks about how much the town has changed, once beautiful but now destroyed by war. She had hoped that joining Shadow Garden would give her the strength to save her kingdom. Numbers 664 and 665 approach Rose and tell her that number 559 will be leading the mission today. 664 recalls that 559 is a powerful fighter who defeated number 89, earning the right to challenge the numbers. Later that night, Rose and the others meet number 559. She asks if they know the mission details, and 664 confirms they do. 559 explains that a small castle town was taken by Perv's faction 2 days ago, but the cult of Diablos has secretly sent their elite force, the Children of Diablos, to take over. The mission is to investigate what the cult is after in the town. 559 asks Rose if she knows why she was chosen for this mission. Rose says it's because she's familiar with Fort First, but 559 reveals that she personally requested Rose because she received her powers directly from Lord Shadow. Rose wonders if that's not true for 664 and 665, but they explain they came under the Seven Shadows guidance. 665 adds that nearly everyone in Shadow Garden, except for the Seven Shadows, received their powers from Lord Shadow. 559 confirms this and says she and Rose are the only exceptions, but she sees Rose as weak. She declares herself a loyal servant of Lord Shadow, ready to eliminate anyone unworthy of him. The group notices the Children of Diablos moving in a certain direction, and 559 asks Rose what lies ahead. Rose explains that the path leads to ruins, a memorial for warriors who fought against Diablos. The scene shifts to the ruins, where 664 spots Quadoy the Gale, one of the cult's leaders, with his first children. Quadoy takes out a card that Rose recognizes from Nelson and uses it to activate the ruins. A figure called the Queen appears and opens a vault containing a ring. Quadoy identifies it as the legendary ring protected by hero Freya. 559 orders the group to prepare for battle, but 664 reminds her that the mission was only meant to be a reconnaissance. 559 insists that the ring is important and must be retrieved. When 664 questions her, 559 dismisses it, saying 664 doesn't need to know. Rose hesitates, mentioning that her mother is in the ruins, but 559 ignores her and attempts to attack the queen. Rose stops her, asking why she's attacking her mother. 559 coldly replies that Rose doesn't need to know. Quadoy, surprised that Shadow Garden found them, comments on the tension within their group and sarcastically says they even brought the missing Princess Rose. Rose's mother calls for her, and at this moment, 559 attacks Rose, but the first children protect her and the queen. 559 sneers, saying she knew Rose wasn't worthy of serving Lord Shadow, and that both of them will die by her hand. Meanwhile, Gamma learns that the team sent to Fort First has started fighting, and Rose has unfortunately seen her mother with the cult. Perv Asshat and the Night Beyond Men are missing, which worries Gamma. She wonders if this could be a trap, but Nue thinks it's too complicated to be one. Gamma reflects on the constant interference in their operations, especially by Mordred, the ninth seat of the rounds, who has been hiding in the shadows. Gamma wonders if Mordred has been secretly controlling the Oriana kingdom all along but hasn't shown up now. Gamma then learns from a newspaper that Rose has returned to Oriana, and she starts to think Perv Asshat might be getting anxious. Perv has used many pawns to investigate the ruins and stop Shadow Garden, but with the unrest in Oriana, security is weaker. Gamma orders Nue to tell Lambda to send reinforcements to the capital. She decides to let the cult have Rose for now, thinking it will make Perv and Mordred act. Gamma reflects on how everything has been set in motion since Rose got involved with both the cult and Shadow Garden. She wonders how Shadow plans for all this to end. Meanwhile, Sid thinks about how no one is left to take the throne of Oriana. With the ongoing conflict between the pro-Perv and anti-Perv groups, he sees a chance for the Eminence in Shadow to step in and look powerful. He learns that Rose has returned to Oriana and thinks it would be dramatic if a mysterious figure guided her to victory. Sid decides Rose would be the perfect candidate to be the new ruler. He wonders if Rose killed her father and if she's trying to become a tyrant. As the Eminence in Shadow, he plans to help her rise to power. Once she becomes a tyrant, she will eventually face the heroes, and then Sid, as the Eminence in Shadow, will help the heroes defeat her. Sid feels everything is falling into place as he plans Rose's rise. However, things take a turn when the militia men come to collect money from the innkeeper. She explains that she paid them the day before, but they ignore her and demand more. They suggest Sheech satisfy them with her body. Sid steps in, pretending to be a coward, but the men beat him up and take the money. The innkeeper, Marie, asks if he's okay, and Sid says he's fine, though they took her money. Marie reveals that she used to be a prostitute in a lawless city and is used to this violence. She's the same Marie that Shadow once saved. A few days later, Sid tries to give Marie money, but she refuses, saying she owes him because he saved her. Sid feels frustrated because his plan to make Tyrant Rose isn't going anywhere. He recalls his failed attempts to make dramatic entrances, like pretending to be a prisoner for a jailbreak or joining the volunteer army. These efforts didn't stand out the way he hoped. While thinking, Sid overhears the militia talking about treasure in the ruins beyond the mountains. He kills them and takes their money. Meanwhile, Marie worries about not having enough money for supplies and rent. She regrets not accepting Sid's offer of help and thinks she may need to sell her body again. But when she opens her door, she finds a pouch of money outside and briefly sees Shadow, realizing he's been watching over her. In another scene, 559 is fighting the first children. She has taken down everyone except Quadoy, who is impressed by her endurance. However, he easily defeats her and plans to torture her and her team. He thinks that with Rose in his grasp, he can rise above Perv Asshat and become the next knight of the rounds. Just then, Shadow appears and uses his powers to heal 559, even regrowing her arm. Empowered, 559 defeats Quadoy, and Shadow heals 664 and 665 as well. The team wonders why Shadow is there, and he asks if the ruins are nearby. 559 tells him that 666 has betrayed Shadow Garden, but Shadow seems confused, not understanding what she means. 559 requests orders to eliminate 666, but 664 tells Shadow that Rose was only trying to save her mother. 559 mentions that Rose caused the key to be stolen, but Shadow still seems unaware of the situation. Shadow notices a flyer revealing that Rose is set to marry Perv Asshat, which makes him angry. He declares that Rose's betrayal will be punished and sets off to confront her. 559 feels validated by Shadow's anger, while 664 worries about Rose's safety. Meanwhile, Lambda and her team arrive in Oriana's capital with reinforcements. Omega wonders if these are all the reinforcements they will get, but Lambda assures her that more are coming and that she is there to assess the situation. Lambda mentions hearing that Rose has joined the enemy, which puts her teammates in danger. As her instructor, Lambda feels it is her duty to judge Rose herself. Kai argues that the Seven Shadows no longer have authority in this matter. Lambda realizes that Shadow has decided to take things into his own hands. Omega says that Lord Shadow is always harsh when dealing with those who oppose him, and no one can stop him. Meanwhile, Sid is preparing for his meeting with Princess Rose. He practices his lines and decides that making a flashy entrance from the sky in daylight would be too much. Instead, he chooses to sneak in and jump over the gate to be more subtle. Inside the palace, Epsilon takes him through, explaining that skilled artists are highly respected here, which is why she has free access. Sid wonders if it's because he's her top pupil, but Epsilon quickly apologizes, pressing her chest against him. Sid notices her chest is mostly slime held together by magic and admires the effort it takes to maintain it. Epsilon senses he's thinking something, but he says he's just admiring her work. Epsilon tells him their spies are waiting for the right moment to act in the palace. Just then, Duke Perv Asshat arrives and asks if Epsilon is performing today. She says she is debuting a new piece, and Perv Asshat expresses his excitement. Epsilon hopes her music will comfort Princess Rose, who recently lost her father, but Perv Asshat says Rose won't be attending. Sid notices that Perv Asshat is worried about his fiancée and is trying to control everything. Perv Asshat asks about Sid, and Epsilon introduces him as her favorite pupil, surprising the nobles since they didn't know Epsilon had apprentices. Perv Asshat asks if Sid has permission to be there, but Epsilon insists it's fine since she brought him. He decides to make an exception and asks Sid to play a piece for them. Sid, noticing Perv's villainous style, prepares to impress the crowd by playing the piano. Sid starts playing Moonlight Sonata, and the nobles are mesmerized by his performance. While playing, Sid secretly takes the possessions of the audience. A maid in the crowd, Margaret, is particularly enchanted by the music. After the performance, Perv Asshat asks Sid's name, but Epsilon interrupts, saying they'll introduce him properly after his training. Sid notices a ring in Perv Asshat's pocket, which 559 had called the key. He discreetly takes it. Sid then asks Epsilon if he can explore the palace, and Margaret offers to give him a tour. She introduces herself and mentions she takes care of Princess Rose. At first, Sid hesitates, but Margaret insists, and he agrees. As they walk through the garden, Margaret praises Sid's music and suggests he could earn up to 100 million zeni a year as a top-class pianist. She tries to recruit him to work for her family, offering to handle everything for him, and starts getting clingy. Sensing an opportunity to get away, Sid asks about Princess Rose. Margaret reveals that Rose is locked up in the West Tower. While Margaret continues talking, Sid slips away. While sneaking around, Sid meets a dark knight who warns him not to touch his girl. The knight says he and Margaret are in love, but it quickly becomes clear he's just a delusional stalker. Sid escapes while the knight keeps rambling. The scene shifts to Princess Rose in the West Tower. She reflects on her actions, believing she saved her mother, but now the country is on the brink of war between Shadow Garden and the cult of Diablos. She looks up and sees Sid climbing up to meet her. She hugs him, saying how much she longed to see him. Sid tells her there's something he needs to say. They sit down, and Rose asks how he got in. Sid explains he snuck in as an apprentice to a pianist friend. He then brings up her marriage, asking if the rumors are true. Rose tries to avoid the topic, but Sid presses her, asking about her father's death. Rose asks him to forget that painful memory, but Sid refuses, saying he can't forget her. He tells her that they are both misunderstood, she for becoming a dark knight, and he for chasing a dream no one understood. He says he understands how she feels. Rose tells Sid that she understands his dreams and will always support him, no matter what others think. Sid then says that while they've both stayed true to their paths, by agreeing to marry her fiancé, she's betraying what she once believed in. He reminds her that she killed her father and stabbed her fiancé to stay true to herself, but marrying him now would undo everything. Rose says she has nothing more to say and asks him to forget about her and find his own happiness. But Sid insists that he can't forget her. At that moment, Duke Perv Asshat enters the room and asks if Rose had a visitor. Rose denies it, but Perv notices her red eyes and tries to touch her. She slaps his hand away, and he grabs her by the neck, warning her not to give him that attitude. He reminds her that her mother's life depends on her agreeing to the marriage, and Rose reluctantly agrees. Sid, who had been listening outside, decides to change his plan after hearing this. He wonders if the ring he took earlier was the wedding ring and if he should have left it behind. Meanwhile, 559 apologizes for her failure in a mission, blaming Rose for the trouble. Epsilon reassures her, saying it's too early to call Rose a traitor. She says this failure isn't entirely 559's fault and that Shadow Garden should have kept Rose and her mother separate. Epsilon explains that Lord Shadow is handling the situation and hasn't punished Rose, so he likely has another plan in mind. She also mentions the mysterious ring from the ruins, which Perv Asshat could use to destroy the Oriana Kingdom. They need to find the ring before Perv can use it. Sid finishes his bath and finds 559 and Epsilon pampering him. He casually mentions that the matter Epsilon referred to will be handled soon. Epsilon is impressed, asking how he managed to do it on his first day undercover. Sid humbly says it was easy. 559 is amazed by how great Lord Shadow is. The scene shifts to Perv Asshat, who talks with Mordred. Perv Asshat assures Mordred that their plan is going smoothly, but Mordred warns him not to get careless. He mentions that some people are starting to suspect them. Perv, confident everything is under control, reassures him, saying the Ring of Succession guarantees his control. Mordred reminds him not to get complacent, especially since Perv isn't married to Rose yet. Perv agrees, understanding the importance of the situation. After the call, Perv reflects that the key, the princess, and the kingdom are almost in his grasp. Just then, the queen enters, revealing that Perv has a secret affair with her. In a cult facility, Zeta finds that an important item they were looking for has already been taken, signaling the downfall of the Oriana Kingdom. She's attacked by a cult lackey but easily defeats him, reaffirming her loyalty to Lord Shadow. Back at the palace, Epsilon is playing the piano while Sid reflects on Rose's situation. He wonders why she continues to let Perv control her even after all she's been through. He decides the solution is simple. He'll use his eminence in shadow skills to free Rose and remove her shackles, bringing her closer to becoming a tyrant. Margaret arrives and expresses concern about Sid disappearing the previous day. She mentions a creepy guard but reassures Sid that she'll protect him. Epsilon overhears and questions Margaret. The two exchange words, with Epsilon mentioning her recital is on intermission. However, Sid has already used his substitution technique to slip away unnoticed. Epsilon, puzzled by how everyone remains calm while war is on the horizon, explains that the nobility of Oriana loves art and despises violence. This has always been the way in Oriana, tied to Black Rose. Sid expresses interest in seeing Black Rose, surprising Epsilon. She warns him it's dangerous but promises to make it happen if Lord Shadow wants it. Sid finds the fuss over a simple flower ridiculous. Later, Sid sneaks into the Queen's quarters and is disgusted to see her in a passionate embrace with Perv Asshat. He watches them, but quickly realizes that telling Rose could push her toward becoming a tyrant. It's a delicate situation that could trigger her rebellion. Meanwhile, Margaret is disrespectful while serving tea to Rose, who tries to talk to her but is quickly dismissed. Rose feels resigned and believes that Margaret will never smile at her again, but she's determined to save her mother. While looking out the window, she hears a strange noise but sees nothing. To her shock, Shadow is sitting in her room, sipping her tea. Rose thinks he's come to kill her and apologizes for her betrayal. But instead, Shadow invites her to come with him and shows her the truth. He takes her to see the Queen and Duke Perv plotting together. Perv tells the Queen that soon the kingdom will be theirs, and the Queen admits to drugging her husband. They talk about how they would have used him better if he weren't dead and even say Rose should have been the one to die. Horrified, Rose vomits, overwhelmed by the betrayal. Shadow tells her this is the truth and urges her to rise as a tyrant because the time has come. As Rose starts to faint from shock, Shadow apologizes, and she soon wakes up in her room. Confused and devastated, she questions the meaning of everything she's done. She cries, wishing she could go back to simpler days. Then, she hears a piano playing. She goes to the balcony and sees Sid playing below. Moved, she calls to him, asking if he will run away with her to a faraway place, somewhere no one knows. Rose reflects on all her pain, killing her father, being betrayed by her mother, betraying her own organization, and being forsaken by her people. But through it all, Sid has stayed by her side. Sid, listening to her, simply says he enjoys the music. He explains that it helps him see the world more clearly by focusing only on what truly matters. He's divided the world into what's important and what isn't, and he believes that to follow his dream, he must focus only on what matters. Rose wonders if this means he's given up everything for her, but Sid clarifies that in this world, there are too many distractions. He prefers the moonlight because it forces people to focus on what's truly important. He asks her what she sees in this moonlit world, then leaves, leaving behind the ring of succession. Later, Sid realizes he's lost the ring. As he enters the bath, he reflects on what he's done for Rose, hoping she'll pull herself together and rise up. Epsilon offers to wash his back, and Sid tells her there was an unexpected development. He gave the ring to Rose, believing that if she has the strength, the rebellion will follow. Epsilon is surprised, but Sid assures her that the decisive battle will be in 3 days, on the day of the wedding. He believes 3 days will be enough for Rose to come to terms with everything. The scene shifts to the day of the wedding. Outside the castle, protesters demand the cancellation of the wedding and the removal of the phony princess from the throne. The soldiers respond by opening fire, labeling anyone who opposes Rose as part of the resistance. Inside, Perv is confident he's close to achieving his goal, but he reflects on the complications he's faced. He hadn't expected the king to transfer the ring of succession to Rose. Mordred told him he'd have to marry Rose to integrate his blood into the royal line and become the owner of the ring. Perv dislikes how the ring must work, but he believes his efforts will pay off. When he opens the ring box, he's shocked to find it empty. He frantically searches for the ring but can't find it. Mordred contacts him, informing him everything is ready on his end. Once the ceremony is over, Perv will take the 12th seat in the Knights of the Rounds. Realizing he doesn't need the ring right away, Perv decides to delay the exchange by making an excuse. Inside the marriage hall, Rose enters the ceremony. The maids gossip about how this is just a formality for her to give everything to Duke Perv. Rose steps onto the stage, and the priest asks if they will take each other as husband and wife. Rose refuses, surprising Perv. She declares that she killed her father, betrayed her kingdom, and joined a shadowy organization. She takes responsibility for her actions but refuses to let things end this way. She accuses Perv of manipulating her father, defiling the queen, and plotting to overthrow the kingdom. Perv asks for proof, and Rose admits she doesn't have any. Perv, growing angry, reminds her he holds a hostage and demands she marry him. But Rose stands firm. She refuses to give up on love, no matter the consequences. She swears on the ring Sid gave her that she will fight for what's right. When she puts the ring on, it activates and shows a video message from the king. The king reveals that he was drugged and manipulated and that Duke Perv is responsible for the kingdom's downfall. He admits he tried to fight back but was powerless. The king warns that a huge organization is backing Perv and leaves the kingdom's future in Rose's hands, urging the people to trust her. The king's video ends with him telling Rose that he loves her. Perv dismisses this as nonsense, but the nobles watching the video now see him as a traitor. In a shocking moment, Rose decapitates Perv, and his head rolls toward the queen. The queen reacts in horror, but before she can do anything, Mordred, hidden in the shadows, kills her. He then reveals himself as the 9th seat of the Knights of the Rounds and congratulates Rose for her key role in the kingdom's future. He activates a device that reveals the key's power doesn't need to be used by the same person who holds it. As the key activates, a black rose appears in the sky, signaling a massive event. Mordred explains that the Black Rose is a legendary weapon that wiped out 100,000 troops in one night. The Black Rose summons Ragnarok, a powerful monster, which starts attacking the capital with deadly beams. Shadow appears and cuts off one of Ragnarok's arms, commenting on the rose in the sky but its unsightly appearance. Alpha hears about Black Rose being activated and thinks the destruction needed for change has begun. As Ragnarok summons monsters to attack, Alpha is confident Shadow can handle it. Mordred is shocked that Shadow hurt Ragnarok and demands to know who he is. Shadow introduces himself, and members of Shadow Garden arrive in the marriage hall, dispersing to fight the monsters. Shadow tells Rose to leave since she has her own mission. Rose leaves, and Shadow goes to face Ragnarok. Mordred thinks Shadow is overestimating himself. Soon, Beta and Epsilon confront Mordred, declaring their intent to kill him and demanding answers. Mordred attacks Epsilon with an invisible sword strike, but she dodges easily. She realizes his sword style uses an elven artifact that makes the blade invisible. Mordred is impressed that she dodged it. Beta mocks him for relying on stolen power, calling him a coward. Mordred attacks in fury, but Epsilon overpowers him. She tells him their wisdom is more powerful than any artifact, and now he will share his knowledge. Mordred warns them they will regret this as he prepares to attack again. Meanwhile, Rose has taken down the last of the monsters inside the castle but realizes there are still many more in the town. She decides to leave it to Shadow Garden and focus on other matters. Margaret tries to apologize, but Rose takes charge, telling her to lead the people to the cellar for safety. She plans to rally the knights and save the citizens. Margaret, now calling Rose Queen, agrees. Outside, Shadow is fighting Ragnarok, dodging its powerful attacks. He captures it with his threads and declares control over the skies. Rose, speaking with Shadow Garden, is approached by the knights, who ask if they can trust Shadow Garden with handling the monsters. Rose assures them they can, as long as the knights prove their worth by evacuating the citizens. As the knights leave, Rose watches Shadow battle Ragnarok and wonders where Mordred is. Just then, Mordred crashes down from the sky with Beta and Epsilon. Furious, he can't believe he lost to them. Beta mocks him, saying it was foolish to rely on artifacts. Mordred insists it's not over, since he still has Ragnarok, and with it, he can defeat them all. Beta points out that Ragnarok's defeat is inevitable, and Epsilon asks Mordred to share information while they wait. Mordred, unwilling at first, finally agrees, believing they will die soon. He explains that there are countless realms outside their world, like fire, ice, and poison realms, and sometimes they collide, connecting different worlds. Magic entered their world when it collided with another, changing the biosphere and destroying the dragons. Mordred believes humans might have come from another realm too. He goes on to explain that things from other realms keep coming to theirs, and sometimes things from their world go to others. He mentions Atlantis, a vanished island, likely taken to another realm. He believes all worlds influence each other equally. The girls ask about Diablos, and Mordred reveals that Diablos came from another realm called the First Realm. This realm is a source of wisdom for their world. Mordred confirms that the rose in the sky is an artificial gate to another realm opened by Oriana by accident. When it opened, magical creatures flooded the world and destroyed Velgalton soldiers. The cult closed the gate to save Oriana. Mordred reveals that the cult wanted to use Rose because of her strong magical bloodline. Her father's refusal to hand her over led to the chaos they're facing now. Mordred says that once Oriana is destroyed, they'll build a better kingdom, but Rose refuses to let that happen. Mordred dismisses her, saying Ragnarok will soon destroy her. Just then, Shadow attacks Ragnarok with his threads, cutting it into tiny pieces. Mordred can't believe his eyes, as Ragnarok was considered invincible. Beta and Epsilon receive a report that all the monsters in the capital have been defeated. Meanwhile, Mordred approaches Ragnarok's fallen arm and merges with it to gain power. He then attacks Shadow but fails. Shadow mocks him, saying even animals know when they've met their match. He punches Mordred into the sky, dodges his energy beams, and punches him into space. Shadow explains that long ago, the gods unleashed lightning to punish Earth, and people eventually learned to harness that power with nuclear bombs. He aims to surpass the power of the gods. Shadow uses his mana to cover the Earth and attacks Mordred with an atomic blast, visible to everyone on Earth. As the light fades, Shadow descends toward Oriana, but a strange black hole-like phenomenon appears above it, pulling everything inside, including Shadow. The scene shifts to a post-apocalyptic Tokyo, where Akane Nishino, a girl from Season 1, is trying to save her friends. She realizes they are all dead, as no one taken by the enemy survives long. As she tries to leave, she's attacked by two men who had kidnapped her before. They are now cyborgs. They knock her out and take her back to the warehouse. When Akane wakes up, one cyborg warns her to be careful because she has many enemies. The other cyborg plans to kill her, but the first man stops him. It's revealed that the men have had their memories altered, and one begins recalling a figure called the Stylish Bandit Slayer. Before the cyborgs can do anything, Shadow crashes through the roof, destroying the men and saving Akane.